Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I have my new friend, Kris Land, with me. Kris, why don't you tell the audience just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me on your Lighthouse podcast. Um, let's see a little bit about who I am. I started as an introverted computer geek as a child, and started programming at a young age, selling Apple II computers. That'll age me a bit. And grew up in North Dakota. And one of the people that bought their computer from me wanted accounting software. So I knew how to code. He knew what needed to be coded, and we did it. And then sold that company at the age of 17, went into a deep depression, ended up coming up with, as we discussed earlier, kind of a download of what the infinity within is about and the construct. So I actually wrote the book 40 plus years ago. And I wasn't an author at the time, so I hired a ghostwriter. Well, the ghostwriter kept wanting to make it her own book. And so I ended up firing the ghostwriter and taking all my notes and sticking them in my filing cabinet. And then,
As one does, right?
yeah, as one does, right? And then, but what was interesting is what I got from writing the notes, basically the book, is it really helped me move forward through life in a way that was different and allowed me to really look at things in a different way. And so from that point, I founded 11 other companies. I took one public with a gentleman named Nolan Bushnell, who is the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese. I had another company where my chief scientist was Frank Fogelman, who was the founder of Gremlin, which became Sega. So I kind of had the two guys that created the coin-op business that are friends. Well, one passed away, the one of them still alive, but really started when the computer industry started. And then to fast forward to where I am now, I'm living in Central Texas, and I started writing books 5 years ago. The first book I wrote was something I was very comfortable with as a topic, because my hobby is building houses. And so the book is called How to Build Your Dream Home. And it turned into a 10-book series, of which 5 are published. The 6th one I'm working on illustrations. And then my wife said at the beginning of 25, she said, you know, the concepts and the way you look at life have helped me so much. You need to finish your book. You need to get your book out into people's hands. So for 3 months, almost solid, in the beginning of 25, I took all my notes out of my filing cabinet, which was pretty dusty, and finished the book. Originally, it was going to be called Your Soul Path or The Soul Path. And then I ended up landing on the idea of the infinity within, and then it got published mid 25, and here we are.
I love it. And I think that there's a lot in that journey that a lot of my audience will resonate. But I think the one I want to pull out, let's time travel back to when you're 17. And by the way, this morning, my son said, you know, what do you know about computers? It's not like you had them when you were a kid. And I'm like, hey, I had a Commodore 64. He was not impressed.
Well, they were, in the day, they were pretty cool, but they're not that impressive anymore.
Yeah, I said, I can't wait till your kids look back and go, oh, you had a PlayStation 5. I'm sorry, Dad, you know. So let's go back to 17, because when you had your exit moment, and I'm guessing you've had a few of these, I know a lot of founders, and it's just funny that you had it at 17. They build their baby, they invest all of their time and energy and passion into it, then they exit, and then this existential crisis hits, going, what now? And you know, I liken us, we climb mountains, we're the entrepreneurs. We'll go up the rough side of a mountain. We don't need a trail. But when we get to the top of the mountain, we look and go, oh crap, there's a taller mountain I need to scale over there. We don't stop and ponder and go, I just did this. You know, we don't stop to celebrate. So how did you, as a 17-year-old, overcome that?
So what was interesting is nowadays you hear stories about people that win the lottery and destroy their lives, right? So for me, it was kind of like winning the lottery, but it was even more so in the sense of, at the age of 17, I thought I'd accomplished everything that I was told I was supposed to go do. And so it left me with a profound, what next? What now? What am I here to do now? And so the very first thing I did, and it just became, just came to me, was I created 3 goals that I'll never be able to fully accomplish, but I can work on accomplishing every single day. And by putting those 3 goals together, it gave me kind of a stair step into moving back into doing stuff and creating things and building companies. And those 3 goals were to have fun, to learn, and to neither at the harm or impedance of others. And with those 3 goals, I was able to literally each day say, okay, what have I done today to have some fun? What have I learned today? What can I learn today? Which, of course, is pretty much infinite, right? And then, of course, not harming or impeding others was part of that goal structure. And that allowed me to get out of the darker place and start seeing the light again of what direction I wanted to go.
I love that. And I think that's a key concept. So we're going to get into that direction because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, society tells us what success should look like. Mm-hmm. And when we get to the top, and by the way, I think entrepreneurs have this weird ability to delay gratification until some future date. A friend of mine calls it time horizoning, and basically we look to the future and go, I'll be happy when. And I really hated the phrase when I was in my 20s. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I'm like, that sounds stupid. And now I look back and go, oh, it was the journey.
It's all about the journey.
There's nothing but the journey, the destination. And that was actually, I had this aha moment a couple of years ago. If we look at life, from cradle to grave, the end result is death. I'm not in a rush to get to the end. So why wouldn't I enjoy the journey in between?
Absolutely.
So your wife brought the book back to your mind. I love that you wrote it, 40 years ago and let it percolate for a while, because I think life wisdom at 17, it looks very different than looking back at 17. What big insights did you find in the book that you went, oh, I knew you were there. I forgot about you.
So it's interesting. The book, by and large, is what I wrote 40 years ago. The only thing that I added into the writing in a soft way is the Gnostic view on the archons. The Gnostics discuss the archons, and then what I found is actually the Bible has references to the archons as well as a number of other religions. And the Gnostic point of view is that the archons are actually the gods of reality, and they created this game that we're in, and they trapped us as souls in order to feed on negative energy that they create within us by creating strife and fear and doubt. And I said, well, I can see how that's possible, but I'm going to assume for a minute that if we're souls, that we're pretty smart and that we probably wouldn't get trapped. But I could see that if we're in this game of Earth, which we can talk about in more detail, that having an archon construct to make the game more challenging and difficult would make sense. And so that did get entered into the book in a soft way. You asked what was a fundamental thing that I got from it. So growing up, my folks were United Methodist, and I had a lot of folks that followed Catholicism and different types and forms of Christianity. And I don't want to change or tell anybody to think differently than what they do, because that's not my goal. But for me as a child, I was taught that I'm supposed to look outside of myself and pray up to God and up to Jesus. And for me, that didn't sit right, especially in reading the Bible and things, but I never understood why. When I actually put pen to paper and actually wrote the book, took all my notes and actually forced myself to write, it became much more crystalline clear and started getting me to ask some fundamental questions. And that is, what became very clear is that maybe, and especially if you go to the Old Testament and some of the old writings before it went through multiple rewrites, maybe what Jesus was trying to do is say, hey, folks, you can do this, and I'm here to show you what you really are. And there's chapters and verses. I'm going to use the Bible as a reference point because it's arguably the most read book on the planet. There's things like we are the children of God, which appears in more than one place, and that we will bring heaven onto earth, and that Jesus tells his disciples, you will do everything I have done and much more. What's interesting about all these chapters and verses is it's not saying, hey, go look outside of yourself and look up. It's actually saying, if you take it into a more literal sense when you read it, hey, you're just like me, go do these things, and I'm going to show you how. And so that's what shifted for me, is that maybe Jesus and other spiritual leaders and teachers tapped into what they are a little bit more than a lot of us, and are just showing us, hey, folks, we're going to be a mirror for you. Go do these things.
I love that. And Kris, when you and I were talking before we hit record, you used the phrase, we're remembering the wisdom within. And I think that's the aha moment. And I've done a lot of shadow work. A friend of mine calls it hell realms. And the big aha moment was, I knew a lot of things when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I didn't know why I knew them, but I knew them. And now I'm looking back going, wow, I spent a lot of years out there looking for someone to, looking for the savior. And the big aha for me was the phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I was like, are you the teacher? Are you the teacher? And then one day I looked in the mirror and went, oh, crap, it's me, isn't it? But then I was like, oh, yay, it's me. Because then I realized that, if I'm the source of my problems, I'm also the source of my solutions.
Mm-hmm. But that's a very scary place, especially when we're taught to be small and disconnected. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at this mirror saying, oh, maybe I'm 100% responsible for what's going on. Yeah. And that's a very terrifying and scary place, especially when we've been taught to play the victim. And now we're being shown that maybe that's not what's actually going on, and that we're actually able to, well, we're responsible for the good and bad things happening to us. But like you said, we're also the co-creators of being able to choose how and why and how we move forward in life.
And I think that was, there's a quote, and I always get it wrong because it's so profound that I always have to ponder it, but it's something to do the effect, we're not afraid of the darkness within, we're not afraid that we're weak, we're afraid that we're powerful beyond measure. And I think that's, most people live that small, disconnected life because it's safe. There's no pressure. Yet when you say, well, God or the universe or whoever your divine being is wants you to shine, holy crap, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. And again, getting back to the concept of the archons, if we're in a game and the archons are designed to keep us feeling small and disconnected, then doubt and fear, or the reverse, fear and then doubt, are the big players in keeping us small and disconnected, right? Because when we feel fear, we typically get locked. We don't move forward. And then when we doubt ourselves, we don't do things. And yet it's those times of creation, those times of remembering that give us the ability to really strive and move forward.
And I think it's easy to stay stuck and say, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim. Whereas when you do the work and you get unstuck, then it's freedom. But there's that dark, scary, I realized for me, we sit in this safe little place and we're happy. Happy is a strong word. We're not unhappy enough to change. And then there's this fog of, I don't know what's between it. And then others will say on the other side, it's the promised land, pardon the expression, but small p, not capital P. But a lot of people look at it and go, I don't know what the journey looks like, so I'm going to stay put. Exactly. And it saddens me to see people playing small because they're afraid of the journey to get to the point where they're playing at the level they're meant to play.
Agreed. Yeah.
Now, you talked about the book being a download. I think that's one of the things I hear the most from my visionary entrepreneurs. We know things. Like, there are just certain things I know with certainty. I don't. I used to try and explain it and try to understand it. Now I just go with it because it's above my pay grade. That's my theory. When I'm meant to know, I'm meant to know. I'm fascinated. There's an author named Riz Verk who has basically written that we're all in a simulation. And more accurately, we all live in our own simulation. So we see things from our perspective, but the reality is there's a bigger universe at play than what we see and can describe with our limited vocabulary.
If you don't mind, I'll take you on a kind of a shorter version of part of the book.